the National Labor Relations Board union will be engaging in a picket and protest and is inviting members of the public who are willing to stand in solidarity for us.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Joseph Webb, he is a field attorney at the NLRB. He is president of the NLRB Union Local 10. Joseph, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. So you talked to us some time ago about funding issues at the NLRB, and from the looks of it, those have not subsided, have they?
They have not. We are getting down to crunch time. If a budget is not passed by the end of this year, come January 1st, the NLRB will be $20 million short of funding for the next year. And over the last near decade now of flat funding, the NLRB has cut everything it reasonably can, with the exception of offices and personnel. And the general counsel and the chairman of the board have both warned Congress that if the budget is not increased by $20 million by the end of the year, that furloughs will begin at some point next year, which will it will definitely mean a loss of services for the labor community and for the American worker.
Before we get into what furloughs would potentially do to the NLRB and to the workers they serve, what has the chronic underfunding meant for y'all at the NLRB and for your ability to complete the mission?
The chronic underfunding has meant that we have less staff available to investigate unfair labor practice charges, to conduct union elections, and that slows down case processing, which becomes extraordinarily harmful in this time of increased labor activity in the United States as the labor movement attempts to expand and attempts to grow. The NLRB is slowed down by this understaffing and lack of funding. And as a result, it can honestly hamper the labor movement and be a benefit for business if we are slower and allow the companies more time to infringe on employees' rights or to try and disrupt the campaign. That puts labor organizations in a very difficult position, and there's often nothing that we can do as NLRB attorneys and field examiners to go any faster than what we're doing. For example, in Region 10, nearly every bargaining unit employee is currently weighed down by 20 or more cases and expected to process between 100 and 200 cases this year, when the gold standard under the NLRB's procedures is closer to 40 cases a year. That's what a fully staffed agency is supposed to have, is about 40 cases per agent, and our agents are having to process between 100 and 200 a year.
Wow. That's ridiculous. And the reason for that is because y'all have less staff than you ought to. And last time you were on the program, you told us what a fully staffed Region 10 would be and what you are currently at. Or maybe it was just the Birmingham office. But can you give us those numbers? What would your office or Region 10 be? How many people would you have if you were fully staffed, and how many people do you have right now?
The number that I have geared to memory is Birmingham. Birmingham, we actually have some good news to update, though it will not last if the budget doesn't come through. But Birmingham historically has had 7 agents plus a supervisor, and plus a PSA or a support staff employee. And at the time of our last interview, we were down to no supervisors, no PSAs, and 3 board agents. We now have 4 board agents, a supervisor, and a PSA. So there has been improvement in Birmingham. But as I said, if the budget doesn't improve, that improvement will be short-lived.
Yes, well, that is good news, but that's still 3 people away from being fully staffed, and 3 people when fully staffed is 9 or 10 is still a lot of that's still having to pick up a lot of slack.
That's right. That's about 120 cases a year that are getting jumbled together that we would otherwise spread out to those additional 3.
And so, moving to the furlough piece of it, what would that look like for for the American worker and for y'all's ability to serve the American worker if those furloughs have to go through?
Well, furloughs, of course, are going to mean that there would be days where there would not be agents available to assist the American worker, meaning that petitions would not be processed, cases could not be processed, petitions couldn't be filed, unfair labor practice charges couldn't be filed on the days of agency furloughs because the agency would have to close its doors on those days. And what the specific terms would look like would likely depend on what management of the NLRB and the NLRB union came to as an agreement for the furloughs. Under Republican administrations, we have come close to furloughs before for the NLRB, but it has never happened. However, the last time it came close, management and the NLRBU came to an agreement that instead of furloughing certain less senior employees for lengthy periods of time to where they'd be missing paychecks, that the agreement at that point in time was that everybody in the bargaining unit would be furloughed for like 1 day a pay period, for example. And on those days, the agency would just not be available to the public.
Right.
And I would suspect that would be the route that management and the union would go, again, to try and minimize impact to its workforce.
Right. And so, this is all really troubling, and this is under a Democratic trifecta. I mean, why have Democrats who continue to tell us that they are pro-labor, pro-union, and pro-working people as they, as they continue to prove otherwise? Why is it that they continue to prove otherwise? Why is it that, and I don't know that that's a question that maybe you feel comfortable answering, but why have they not been able to fund the NLRB? This seems like such an easy thing to do with with a Democratic trifecta, with a House, a Senate, and the presidency being held by Democrats.
That's a very, very good question. And it has become an increasing concern for the NLRBU. Myself, and as NLRBU Local 10 president, I have seen increasing concerns about this administration throughout our own unit, as this same administration will not only refusing to take the lead in pushing for us to get the funding that we need, and failing to take this opportunity to push forth strong legislation that would fund the NLRB now and in the future while they hold all 3 houses of Congress. They've not only failed to do that, they have engaged in stalling and hard bargaining and bad faith bargaining, arguably tactics that have kept us from reaching a collective bargaining agreement. We have now not had a collective bargaining agreement since the Trump administration. The Biden administration's General Counsel Abruzzo, has failed to bargain to a collective bargaining agreement with the union here at the agency. And she is now taking the position that come December 23rd, she intends to revert back to working conditions that we last had under the Trump administration and under Peter Robb.
That's and that was going to be the next question, is walk us through, you said that they've really been, at best playing hardball in negotiations and at worst potentially bad faith. And talk to us about, we hit on this some last week or the week before, but talk to us some about what what y'all are asking for, which again is incredibly reasonable, and what the impacts have been of y'all not getting those things.
Well, what our biggest concern is within the NLRBU is the ability to telework and have flexible work schedules. Beginning during the pandemic, the NLRB temporarily allowed for flexible work schedules, which, in my opinion, as union president, it played a significant factor in driving the increase in organizing and labor movement because it increased our access to the public. Suddenly, for the first time, NLRB employees were not held to this strict 9 to 5 hour standard. As long as we got our hours in, we were allowed to work whatever time the public needed us. So if a worker didn't get off work until 8 a.m. or didn't get off work until 4 a.m., we could meet with them by Zoom, like you and I are meeting today. We could meet with them by Zoom, by phone, at whatever time they needed to be able to help them draft a petition, to take their charge, to investigate their unfair labor practice claims, and to try and help them seek justice for workers under the National Labor Relations Act. And in addition to that, we were allowed full-time telework. Now, since the Biden administration has pushed for an end to COVID restrictions, the union and general counsel reached a temporary memorandum of understanding that allowed us for 5 telework days per pay period. However, effective December 23rd, in retaliation for us not agreeing to her proposals regarding other issues in the collective bargaining agreement, the General Counsel plans to revert back to allowing us only 3 days of telework. In addition to that, she has already taken away our flexible work schedules to where we can no longer be available to the public during whatever hours of the day that they need us. The General Counsel's policies have therefore restricted our access to the public, and they've also discouraged workers and many of our best workers from wanting to continue working in the agency. Many workers within the NLRB within the last year. And one reason Birmingham was able to get some more agents is because in other areas of the country, NLRB attorneys are leaving in droves. First, our funding was under attack by nobody in Congress being willing to act. And now the General Counsel, who came into our agency proclaiming to be so pro-worker, is attacking our working conditions and worsening them here in the agency, and frankly worsening our ability to serve the public. Another thing she has done is during the pandemic, we for the first time began being allowed to take affidavits and meet with witnesses and gather evidence via Zoom meetings. That is now being discouraged. We have to have extraordinary circumstances to be able to flexibly meet with witnesses. Instead, they are required to currently drive at their own expense to meet with us in our office face to face, often having to miss work or come up with some excuse to claim that they have to be out of work to meet with us, and essentially putting their own livelihoods at greater risk, and frankly discouraging members of the public from pursuing charges against us because they don't have the access that they've had to us for the last 2 years now. And from my point of view and from the bargaining unit's point of view, it seems to all be a retaliatory bargaining tactic by the General Counsel to try and force us to concede, to give management greater power on other working benefits if we want to continue serving the public the way we have over the last 2 years.
And so she's withholding that from you in retaliation for y'all not budging on other parts of the contract. What are those parts of the contract that y'all aren't wanting to budge on?
Well, it's Around 23, it's 23 various provisions of the contract. The last update I received from the National Union that anything from hours of work to bereavement to project telework when we have a project that we need to work on at home or work on without distraction, those type of provisions that in large part have been limited. Another one I'm leaving out is discipline, the disciplinary procedures. But the argument from the agency in many of these provisions is that she does not want agency management to be required to follow these guidelines anymore. They're wanting these provisions. They are demanding that these provisions go from the agency will or must do something to they may do something. In other words, turn all obligations into permissive subjects.
Right. Wow. That's just I can't understand it. I can't understand it, Joseph. These people are totally, their reasoning is opaque to me. I can't understand it. And and so y'all are wanting to try to get this collective bargaining agreement pushed through before the furloughs, so that you've got, and you want to bargain over the furloughs as well, but also you want to be able to get a CBA before the end of the year because of the issues with the FLRA, the Federal Labor Relations Authority, which functions in some sense the way that y'all do for private sector workers, right? So the way that, so the NLRB is kind of the judge of private sector labor law. Well, the FLRA is the judge of federal government labor law. And they have had an issue where the FLRA is potentially going to be without a quorum. And so, because of, again, the Democrats' inaction in the Senate, because they have so far refused to confirm Ernie Dubester to a second term. And so, I guess I said some of it, but just walk us through some of your thoughts on, the issues with the FLRA, why and their refusal to confirm Dubester to a second term, and the urgency that adds to y'all to try to bring a speedy resolution to your negotiations.
Right. You have nailed it perfectly. In the sense that it truly makes no sense that Ernie Dubester has not been confirmed in nomination when, yes, Republicans have blocked it in committee, but to get it out of committee, all that has to be done by the Democrats is put it to the floor for a vote, and a party line vote is all it takes to confirm it. And the FLRA, just like you explained,
just really quickly, just for people who are listening on, we're on 3 radio stations. One of them is a conservative radio station. Just so that people are aware, Ernie Dubester was confirmed unanimously to 2 prior terms to the FLRA. So he's not an unknown quantity. I mean, isn't that right, Joseph?
That's exactly right. And like you said, the FLRA is the agency that enforces federal labor law for federal employees and federal labor unions. So a FLRA that does not have a quorum and can't function and can't issue binding decisions, that means that the current administration and any administration without a quorum, that their agency heads can commit whatever unfair labor practices they want without the FLRA being able to enforce their employees' rights to keep that from happening. And without having a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement, there's always the potential that the previous agreements, the expired agreements grievance process can just be completely ignored, and that there could be employees such as NLRB employees could be left with no redress without a functioning FLRA.
And so, because of the urgency to try to resolve your negotiations, y'all are escalating, and y'all are going to be holding a picket in front of the NLRB headquarters. And when is that happening?
December 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time at the NLRB's headquarters in Washington, D.C., the National Labor Relations Board Union will be engaging in a picket and protest, and is inviting not only NLRB employees from all over the country, but members of the public and any labor leaders, any labor members who are willing to stand in solidarity for us, to ask for an agency to be stabilized and allow us to continue enforcing and protecting employees' rights the way that we have the last few years. We ask that you come and stand with us to try and make sure these protections and the enforcement continues.
Joseph Webb, is there anything that we've left out?
I don't think so. I appreciate your time today, and appreciate all who can stand in solidarity with us on this.
Thanks again. Joseph Webb, president of the NLRB Union, Local 10, field attorney at the NLRB in Birmingham. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Appreciate yours. Thank you.
All right.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.